Uh, Everyone, welcome to the Campfire Project and our second panel discussion. And the reason we've all got silly grins on our faces at the moment, I just started recording this a little moment ago and had the thing on pause. So we're doing really good, having a great conversation. I've done a great introduction, so let's see if I can now get it right and we'll just stuff it up altogether. Today I've got three really great mates in that. I've got Doug Garth from Victoria. Doug works in the area of anti-bullying and as a speaker, working in the AFL area as well, in the football, using that as an area to change boys' directions. He and his wife are foster parents, and they look after the children that are going through really tough times and getting them ready to go off to other families. Welcome to the show, Doug.
Cheers, thanks, Alan. We try to get the kids prepared, I suppose, get rid of some of the anger and hopefully make their long-term foster care a lot easier and transition a lot easier.
Excellent. And what we'll be talking about today is going to be about relationships, and you and your wife working with those kids, there's going to be a lot of pressures in that area, and that's something that's going to be interesting to see how you've worked your relationship around those kids. But then we have John Hope from the Central Coast. John is an ex-policeman, a survivor of cancer. He works in the area of coaching men in anti-bullying and also working in the area of PTSD. Welcome to the show, John.
Yeah, thanks, Alan.
And then we also have Michael Lauria. Michael's from Victoria, and Michael's area is in a men's self-awareness advocate and helping men to find their purpose and also then live a life of fulfillment. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Thank you, Alan. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Now, I wish that we actually had my introduction to John, because he did a beautiful segue into Michael's before.
Yeah, I didn't want to do you out of your job, though. I felt like I did you out of your job last time.
Well, as you can see, we're already having a great time, and the way it should be around the campfire when men get together and discuss things, lighthearted and everything else, but be able to be serious about things as well. So it's one of the areas that we were talking about before, Doug, was in that relationships, domestic violence, and it not just being where men are the perpetrators, but also where men are the victims as well.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, in my household we had a lot of domestic violence and a lot of family violence, but when I mentioned that to friends and stuff like that, they automatically assumed that my mother was the victim. But in their household, that was definitely not the case. My father and the children were the victims, and my father was just too ashamed to come forward and get help because he was meant to be the man of the house, so he didn't go get help at all.
Yeah, so it's definitely an area where it needs a lot of attention, being aware of how to actually build those relationships and understand. John, can you give a little quick background on yourself there and how that segues into what Doug was talking about?
Yeah, well, like you said, I had 20 years in policing. I grew up with a alcoholic mother who was quite violent and abusive. So I can really relate to what you're saying. She could be quite vicious. She was a functioning alcoholic, which is like highly functioning. I've never met anyone that can do what she does, but then at 6 o'clock at night, she's not responsible for what she says. So I can totally relate to what you're saying there. And you basically become a practical psychologist when you're dealing with something like that, because you got to learn how to negotiate that minefield. And you then going into policing, like you were saying, there is a lot of men out there that are victims of domestic violence, and people aren't aware of that. The way that the legalities are set up, it's not really set up for men being victims. And I'm not saying that there's not women being victims. I've seen plenty of that, but there is a lot where there is men, and it just doesn't work. I can tell you a quick story. One at Burke, there was one lady. There was a Aboriginal family, and she was about 100 kilos. He was about 50 kilos. And they'd have massive violent things, and we had to go and lock him up afterwards. But he would wait till she went to sleep to punch her, because that was the only time he could get a hit on her, and she would flog the shit out of him. And I'm not condoning that, and I'm not saying that's typical, but like you said, the law's not, and people's perceptions aren't set up for a man being a victim. And I'm not condoning his actions at all. Please don't take it that way. But they're but you're 100% correct. Like it's all about perception, and people's perception of what actually happens in the real world and what actually happens in their world. There's a big distance, and you trying to explain that to people. It's like that old saying: "The person convinced against their will is of the same opinion." Still, you can't convince someone. They've got to experience. They've got to go through it. So yeah, I totally understand what Doug's talking about there.
And Michael, and that you're working with men who are going through a lot of issues. How much have you seen of this yourself in the work that you've been doing?
Look, I'll second what both of the guys have said in regards to domestic violence and against men. It's certainly very very prevalent, I should say, out there, and there's a lot more going on than people realise. So what the guys are saying is really true. And one of the things that I deal with, I'm also a relationship coach, so I deal with a lot of relationships and have been for the last 15 years. And I found that because as men, we have this idea that we need to be the protector and the provider, and this is what society is kind of set up as well. But by the same token, we also take on that role voluntarily. When we can't be the protector and when we actually feel like the victim, it's very disempowering for us as men. And so men don't actually speak up. And both of the guys have said this. Men do not speak up because they feel like they should be the protector and they're the ones that need protecting. So there's a lot of shame associated with that for men. And so this is why I believe you don't hear a lot about it, because they actually only say anything when they're in a position in a consultation with me or with an alcohol and drugs person or with law enforcement or, somebody at court, for instance, these sorts of things. Before it actually gets to that point, guys are really, really hesitant to come out and say, I'm actually the victim of domestic abuse and violence. So unfortunately, the society that we live in and the paradigms that have been set up over centuries and centuries with women and men and the roles that we're supposed to play in relationships and also in society lend itself to a situation where as men, they just don't feel comfortable or safe stepping up and saying, hey, I'm a victim of physical abuse or assault or something like that. It's just not a thing that men feel comfortable doing.
Yeah, and within the police force, you would have seen that a lot of that. John,
Absolutely, 100%.
What's the attitude towards men? In general, what would be the police force's response to men who, especially when they first started coming forward, because we never heard of men having being victims. How were they treated?
It's my answer is probably a generalised one. I'm 10 years out of date with current legislation, but there's. I think, like what Michael was saying, there's that social perception, that you're weak to come up and do it. So I don't think I think the legislation's set up for both parties, but I think it's more of a social thing where, like what bloke wants to go and say, I got belted up by a girl? Like your father tells you when you're 3 years old, the girl can't bash you up. Like there's that sort of perception. So, exactly what Michael said. It's just it's more a social thing, and it's like shame. Like the person coming forward, that's shameful. Like that's they feel like they're putting themselves down when they're not. And realistically, this does happen, but you just get caught in that corridor of it being, the shame plays a part, and it makes people reluctant to come forward with their experiences because they've got that fear of how they're going to be socially perceived.
Yeah, you're going to say something, Doug?
Yeah, it's not only shame that he's the victim, it's also that shame that he's no longer the protector of his children. He's no longer, that he's the man of the house. And like, I'm a white ribbon ambassador, so I'm out there, letting people know that violence against women is not okay. But I'm also letting people know that violence against anybody in household or anywhere is not okay.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I'm not saying my father didn't hit us, but I still to this day believe that my father hit us as protection. He would hit us once and send us to our room. Where if her mother hit us, she'd hit us like 1,000 times, drag us around by our hair, and be very violent. So as he's seen her escalating, he would jump in and grab one of us if we was in trouble and give us a hit and send us on our way. So he was sort of giving us discipline as protection as well as discipline. I see my eyes.
That's a really good way of looking at it.
That's excellent. So what other thoughts you got there, Michael, on that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, a few years ago, as part of what I was doing with magistrates court and family court, people were being referred to me for counselling services, if you like. This was about 10 years ago, from the family court, and a lot of these guys that I would speak with would say, "Oh, mate," they would actually say to me, "Mate, I'm not the one that's been abused here. Sorry, she's not the one that's been abused here. I'm the one that's been abused." Mm. And they'd sit in front of me and they'd tell me their story, and I'd say, "Well, you've got to be honest. You've got to put this stuff in affidavits if that's what you feel, etc., etc." I'd sit there with them in the magistrates in the family court, and the magistrate would look at their affidavit at their allegations of abuse against their ex-partner, and the magistrate would literally, I saw this half a dozen times, exactly the same response. They'd look up over their glasses at the guy and say, "So you're saying she hit you? Mm-hmm. She was abusing you. Is that what you're saying to me?" And he'd sort of look over his glasses at the guy with a smoke on his face. And it would set up an environment for this guy, even in family court, where he would feel absolutely emasculated in every way, shape or form that you possibly could, in front of a magistrate, in front of other people, in front of his ex-partner, and everybody else that was in there. So, you know, I just wanted to second what the other guys were saying again, in that it's just not, the system is not set up to support men.
No, I had a similar experience
over
with
the
that.
top of their glass. It's a bit like being back at school, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And we feel we got that from our school teacher.
Yeah.
And here you are, a grown man going through it. John?
I went through the family court system twice with my two boys. The first one I went through, we're in the Campfire. This doesn't get out, but this is pretty personal stuff. She is a police officer, but I went, when I get into something, I go vertical. I find out all the information I can. And I had to cover my ass because she was baiting me on phone calls, baiting me at changeovers. You know, I'm talking very, like the way I'd speak on the phone to speak to my 2-year-old son, I'm speaking now. And I could tell on the other end that I was being baited. So I went out and I got a telecommunications device that would record it. This is before mobile phones could do it. Yeah, I just put the thing up to the earpiece so I could hear everything that I said and everything that she said. And I did every conversation and every changeover for 3-4 years. And that's a lot of information. Now, I was a policeman, so I'm used to doing that sort of stuff. Now, if I was recording it, how do you reckon I sounded? I sounded all right. But I had it being dragged behind a car. I've got a kicking in the door and all sorts of things. Now, when I went to court, and like you were saying, you know, the magistrate goes, "Oh, so you're a victim." I went, "Yeah, I was." Now, here is a recorded, like I had them on CDs, and I also had it written out. So we can go to it. I'll bring something up, we can go straight to it and you can hear it. And they said, "You can't do that." And I said, "Yes, I can. Under Section 66 of the Listening Devices Act, I'm allowed to, as a police officer, take this recording against her will." And what most people don't realise is that you can still record someone. It might not be inadmissible, but any police officer that turns up has to listen to all evidence, inadmissible and admissible. Just because it can't go to court doesn't mean it can't be used. And the police officer at the time can then make a direction on what they've listened to for the outcome. So I say to so many people, record the shit out of what you're doing, because they'll say, "Oh, it's not admissible." So what? It's not going to court. It's still save your ass. You know, and we've all got mobile phones. We've all got these things. So these things can save you. You know, but there's this perception out there that it's illegal. It's not illegal. It's just inadmissible. It's a big difference.
You need something like that, because without it, it's, you know, he said, she said.
That's right. That's right. And you're bashing your head against the wall. You get nowhere.
And those things just escalate anyway. So with the relationships, as we, you know, I've always had this argument, or I've had this, I just get upset every time I hear, stop violence against women. Now, I believe it should be stop violence, period. End of story. Whether it be children, men or women. While we've got this gender separation, this is where we've got problems. We're actually creating barriers because of the gender. And once we start looking at it and going, okay, let's look at the situation, because there's enough information out there saying that it's not gender-based. It's coming back further from there. So it comes back to, you know, as you're working with resilience, lack of resilience, and a lot of other areas, a lot of things there. So we really need to come back to that, because we can't work on a problem between the genders while we're focusing on gender. So we need to start looking at it from a different point of view.
Absolutely. There's a lot of stuff going out. There's a lot of stuff out there at the moment in the media and on social media in regards to, you know, women's this and women's that and the Me Too movement. And it just goes on and on and on. And I think a lot of the problem, and then we've got men that are coming in and saying, well, hang on a second, what about us? And then they're setting up, you know, and then, again, nothing wrong with this, but setting up men's groups, and women are saying, well, why can't we be part of the men's groups? And we're saying, well, let us be part of the women's groups, and then you can be part of the men's groups. And then the women say, we can't be part of our group either. And it kind of goes around in a circle. And this is just a pattern that I've noticed on social media. And I just became the ambassador for the Lone Fathers Association of Australia. And this is a big thing that I've seen. I actually put a post up about a week ago on Facebook, and I had a couple of ladies come on and say, well, what about the women? And I was as diplomatic as I possibly could be. And what I've found, though, is that this third wave of feminism that's coming through, and I want to be careful not to be too controversial here because we're talking about relationships and men, but I think it's relevant, and I think this third wave of feminism that's come through now is very toxic, and I think what that's doing is it's also encouraging toxic masculinity, which you touched on before as well, Alan, where a lot of men are coming up and going, well, we're men and we're, you know, going to thump our chests and do whatever we're going to do as cavemen again, and you women are going to be forced into submission. And I think there's
Have you met women?
Yeah, try and force them into submission. It's not going to work that one.
No, but this is the thing, right? We've gotten into this battle of wills between the masculine and the feminine, the male and the female. When in fact, if we start to learn how to collaborate a lot better, and we actually form groups that have men and women to come to some, you know, good resolutions surrounding all of this, that's where things will actually start to improve. But you're right, Alan, when we've got this, you know, what feminism is doing and what this toxic masculinity is doing, it's causing even more of a divide and even more segregation between men and women, instead of what everybody says that we're trying to do, and that is bring people together. Yeah. So,
now, I had a friend of mine say to me the other day, it's it's swinging the pendulum back the other way. But the trouble is, it's pulled back the other direction, and all this angst is built up. So when it swings back the other way, it's just going to go to the full length again, and all it's going to do is swing backwards and forwards. And we'll never. And as it keeps going backwards and forwards, the angst and the anger is just going to build up. Nothing's going to be resolved.
And how wonderful would it be if we have two people on either end of the pendulum going, "Hang on a second, let's try and keep it somewhere here, just somewhere here, just for now."
Why does there have to be a pendulum? Like, there's men and there's women. We're different. People are trying to make us the same. We're not. If we were the same, leave the toilet seat up. There'd be an argument every time. Okay, we're different. We have different things that run us. Like, men are on testosterone, women are on estrogen. Women are carers, men want to go out and kill things. Like, we're not the same.
That's it.
No one's better. No one's better or worse.
You know, it's not about a competition or anything else. It's not that we're, the difference is we're complementary. That's where the focus should.
That's right. Yeah.
On the complementary side, because for a man, for instance, to be loving and everything else, he needs someone to be able to be loving too. We need women. We need children. And the same thing that the women need on their side as well. You can't experience all of your emotions to the fullest sense unless you're involved with all those other people. You can't express it without those people. So we complement each other.
Yeah,
if we got back 100%. To that focus, we'd remove a lot of the headaches that we've got today.
Totally agree.
Me Too movement that came out first of all, then it's now Men Too. Well, you'll notice I've been using a hashtag I put together, which was We Together. Not two, but together. And we, as in a lot of us. As they say, it takes a community or a village to raise a family. And I fully agree with that. It takes both men and women to be able to raise the children up to that level. And it takes the women to raise the girls into womanhood. And it takes the men to raise the boys into manhood. So we have that. We need that.
I also believe there's a middle ground. I totally agree with what John said, that men and women are very different, and we have different needs and we respond differently to things. However, I maintain that there's a good middle ground where we can all come together and go, well, these are your strengths as a woman, these are my strengths as a man, and working together, this is what we can achieve together. Because separately, we all have limitations. Men have limitations, and women have limitations. So I'm just a strong advocate of actually collaboration and working together and honouring the differences and really encouraging the fact that within those differences is a lot of strength. And if we start to try and explore that, I think we'll go a lot further than where we're all trying to go now, which will just continue to swing that pendulum.
And that's it. And Steve, Doug, with your situation and that, there's got to be a lot of stress when you're dealing with these children. They come into the household, they're in a bad way, they've got no connection with you at all, and then you and your wife put all that work into and get them prepared, ready for another family to look after them. That's got to put a lot of pressure on the two of you. How do you two hold it together?
Really just patience with each other. and it's both knowing that we've got an end goal. So believe it or not, we have little passwords like, I'll walk past and just say I'm going to the shed. It's my little keyword that I need a break, or vice versa. She'll say, I need to go do something and go break. But it's funny, it's trying to get through to these kids that you're not trying to replace their parents. You're not trying to be their parents. That there is a better life coming up for them. We're not trying to replace their parents. We're just trying to make now better. We're not trying to be there for you forever, and we're just trying to set you up. And and you do get attached. We've got one little girl at the moment that we have a fair bit. She comes out probably once a month, and for Christmas, she comes out for a week over Christmas and stuff. But you do get attached to some of these kids, but it's you just got to look at the end goal. And we have a lot of kids that come back from foster care. Carers just need that that little break, so we have them for respite over the weekend and try to help out a little bit and get them back on the right track and send them back. But it does take a lot of patience. Some of the kids are challenging, to say the least. Hear a lot of words you probably haven't heard for a while, and violent.
So as you say, it's for, it's what they're going through as well, but it's also what you're going through, because as you said, those kids you get attached to those kids just as much as they get attached to you. So then you've got to pass them back and everything else. So that's got to put some pressure on you and your wife when all of a sudden that child's then moved on to somebody else. Yeah,
it might sound strange, but as far as we're concerned, if we never hear from that child again, we've done our job. And it's as sad as it sounds, because if they go back into a foster home and they don't come back to us, that's a great thing. That's a really good thing. But it is very rewarding when you bump into them randomly down the street or at a shopping centre or something, and the foster carers don't know you from a bar of soap, and this kid will come running up and give you a hug or stuff like that. So, But in most kids, they respond well to not necessarily firmness, it's more structure. My wife works at a primary school, so she's very structured, and she'll put a structure on the fridge and she'll say, right, this is it. Do not move from that structure for the first, however long a week, however long it takes. And then once we get the kids in the routine, we start swaying a little bit, because start treating them more like a part of the family rather than someone we're trying to get them straight line, like military, so to speak.
Excellent. And the other day I was listening to one of your videos, Michael. You were sitting in the car and giving a bit of a talk to the men, giving them some advice about what's coming up. Because the reason I put out the one this morning, and I've got this one will go out next Wednesday. Boxing Day. Mainly because there's going to be a lot of men out there who, have lost their direction and everything goes at Christmas. This is a tough time for people. It's probably the most stressful time of the year.
Most suicides are any.
I've been through that exact same situation that I was talking about in the video, and that was really for dads who are separated and or divorced, with obviously with children, going through periods of time where they have issues with custody and just being able to see their children for extended periods of time. And I can certainly relate, because I went through that for a number of years. And it is, and I remember vividly, I still do to this day, that Christmas, Easter, birthdays, they were all, most of the time, really, really challenging, because there were many Christmases where I would spend it either alone or with only one of my children, or I can only remember maybe, half a dozen Christmases in the last 12 years where I was actually able to spend Christmas with both of my children. And that's a good result. Like, I'm not complaining. That's a good result compared to a lot of guys out there that have got intervention orders against them, and they've got all sorts of horrible stuff that's been happening. So look, that was just about that was really just reassuring dads that there are ways through the difficulty, the challenge, the struggle, and it's about building a sense of self-awareness and really understanding that it's a phase, it's a transitionary period, and we have to really make sure that we keep the kids' best interests at heart at all times. And that was really the theme of the message, to help these guys through this period of time leading up to Christmas, knowing that it's sort of hanging over their heads that maybe they'll be waking up on Christmas morning on their own. Yeah.
There'll be a lot of the men who have got some connection, and in that stressful time, that's when they're actually having more arguments with their ex and making situations worse because of the way they respond to things. So, this is the main thing I was looking at, was with this in relationships. Yes, we have to work on our own masculinity and things like that. We've got to deal with the issues that are going on, but we've got to get ourselves right, and then we've got to be able to deal with those things that are happening around us. So with Christmas coming up and everything, what sort of advice have you guys got for men in their relationships, those that are maybe with a partner, how to improve that situation, and also then those that are separated from their partners, how they can improve things over Christmas?
I'm happy to go.
Also, with their relationship, as much as my wife doesn't like it, I'm probably more the female in our family, as in I'm the one that shows my emotions more, I'm the one that shows my feelings more, and I like talking about things that are going on in my life, where she really doesn't like that so much. But I think that's really, really helped us in a way that we express to each other what we're feeling and what we're going through. So we don't go through things alone. We're always talking about things, we're always together, and we're always discussing every little problem. And because if you discuss the little problems, there's not really a big problem, because you get on top of it pretty early. That's sort of the way we go through, discussing everything.
That's always a good point to start with, is always make sure that you address it before that all builds up, and then you haven't got the energy to do it the right way. Things are going the wrong way. What were you going to say, John?
I was more along the lines of with the kids. Look, I've got two boys. One just did his HSC, got 92.9 in his ATAR, did very well. And my other son, that's Jock, and then Angus is 16. So Christmas Day, I'm not going to have Angus, but I've had Angus all year. He's made a decision earlier this year to come and live with me, and he hasn't seen his mum for quite a while. But he's going tomorrow to go and spend some time with her, and I won't see him until after Christmas. But I think it's important to put on them, like, Christmas is a special day, and yeah, I'd like to see him. I saw him last year, but it's more about them too, and making it easy for them, because the transition between the two households, did you hear that? Thunderstorm's just about to hit. I've got a nervous dingo at my feet. It's about them, like it's about what's comfortable for them. Like we're going through things, and I think we've got to take the focus off ourselves. Like, don't be selfish. Like, sure, we'd like to have time with our kids, but it's about what's fair and easiest for them, because they're the ones that are going through it. They're not mature like us, like we like to claim to be. They haven't had that base, so it's making it easier for them for their transition, but still trying to be fair at the same time. So I think you just got to be more mindful of the impact your wants have on your kids.
How about you, Michael?
Yeah, that's awesome. I like that. Look, in terms of relationships, it's really important. I mean, kids are on school holidays now, or soon. Maybe they are already. But kids are on school holidays. There might be financial pressures. You're about to see family that you may not want to see over Christmas. And there's all these factors that don't come into day-to-day life in the rest of the year, or most of the rest of the year. And I think one of the big things that we do as men, and as people really, is to be fully conscious of how we're feeling and what we're thinking in any given moment, especially when emotions and stress are high and the kids are running around and they, whatever's happening. It's really, really important, because in those moments, it's easy to snap. It's easy to snap and say something or do something that you really don't mean. And Christmas is coming up, and it should be a very special time of year, as John was saying. It's a very special time of year for people. Kids need to feel safe. People need to feel safe. And it's important for us as men to provide an environment where everybody feels safe and everybody feels supported and loved. So it comes back to that self-awareness again.
Yeah. You're saying something then, Doug?
Oh, no, I was just agreeing, that was all.
Okay. Yeah, so really what it's come down to on that, by putting the focus off of us onto the family, it takes the pressure off us as well, because we're able to look at it from their point of view. And at the same time, it's then knowing that, well, Christmas is a short period of time. But as you were saying, and others were saying, and somebody else was saying today, that for men and that there's a lot of groups out there that are open over Christmas as well that they can get in touch with if they need to. But in the long term and that, we've still got to deal with our relationships. What happens after Christmas? How do we actually improve our relationship with our partners? How do we actually deal with things from there? What sort of advice would you generally give to men in a longer term when they're looking at being in a relationship? Any advice?
I'd say work on yourself first. I think, it's like when you're in the airplane, put the thing on put the oxygen mask on yourself first, then do the kids. Because you can't, you've got to work on yourself. Then you have your platform where you can work with other people. So, but, working on yourself, working on how you deal with things. If you're in a bad place, then you need to get out of that bad place. I did a lot of martial arts training, and one thing it taught me is how to find a safe place in a dangerous place. Like you can sit there in front of someone and someone's throwing a punch, people get all jacked up with nerves and get worried, but you only have to move 2 inches and that punch goes sailing past your head, once they're committed to the punch. So if you can find a safe place in a bad place, and you can't always do that on your own. So, like with what Michael does, find a coach, get someone who can help you find that safe place. Once you find that safe place, you can operate better. Your head's freed up. Your head deals with fear. So once you free that up, and then you work on your action and results. So if you want certain results, then you need a certain action. If you can't find that action, then you find a coach. One of the people, when I first joined the police, I went to Surrey Hills, and one of the blokes, like, you get all this legislation and all sort of shit you got to remember. And then this bloke goes, "Why are you trying to remember it?" He goes, "It's not a matter of what you can remember. You just have to know who to ask." So I focus my thing on knowing who to ask, and that's a coach. You don't have to have the answer, but you can find the person who's got the answer pretty easily. So so I'd work on that. That's how I'd do it. I'll work on that, and then work on your action and results.
And you'd find that, Michael, that would work very well with the way that you work with men doing exactly that too, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. Look, I'm a strong advocate, a big advocate of the fact that your level of self-awareness will determine the quality of all of your relationships in life, whether that be with your partner or your kids, colleagues, whatever it is. And then as a flow-on effect, that will then in relationships, it increases intimacy. It increases, it forms stronger connections and stronger bonds with the people that you love as well. So I'm all about, this, Alan, I talk about this all the time. So I'm all about the levels of awareness. Like, where are you in terms of your own self-awareness? And then when you figure out where that is, then you can really determine how much further you need to go or want to go in order to improve the relationships and the stuff that's actually important to you in life. Because when something's not serving you in life, when something's not working for you, it just means that you haven't quite connected with that level of self-awareness that you need in order to change those values or those beliefs that you might have about that particular circumstance or situation. And then once you are able to do that, then you find your results actually change as a consequence.
Yes, as you say, it's very much about changing that level of awareness. Also looking at situations in your life and going, okay, well, that's the way I've been thinking about that. But what else happened? How else can I look at that as well?
Yep.
And revaluing things. Like with my first wife, I had, she left me with 3 boys to raise. And, how I got over the animosity towards her was to look at the fact, well, what was the relationship about? She gave me 3 sons that I love and respect. And without that union, I never would have had those boys. So I was able to look at it from that point of view of being the person who helped me to actually, who bore those children for me. And if it hadn't been for her, I wouldn't have had them. So all the other stuff that I've been focusing on in the past was no longer a focus.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
you
think
got to
that's
have that gratitude.
Gratitude, yeah, there it is. John.
Ah, Jesus Christ, bull.
Gratitude is the most powerful thing in the universe. If we can live in a state of gratitude, everything is manageable, every relationship is salvageable, and things just start to work.
That's it. And sometimes it's hard to actually look at it in a different way, and that because we're caught up into our emotions. And as John said, that's why we need a coach. Somebody, because as they say, we can't see the forest because we're too close to the tree. It's right here in front of us. We need somebody who can see the bigger picture and go, hey, have you thought about looking at it this way?
But
And
they've also got to be coachable.
Yeah.
You know, I've spoken to a person recently about coaching, and they just weren't coachable. Do you know what I mean? Like, we never even got to that point because you've got to be coachable. You get a lot of people that they're like tire kickers, you know, car yards. They're coming over and, I want some self-improvement. I want something, but, you know, I'll let you know. I was like, well, mate, you won't let me know. you need to let
How about letting
know.
yourself know?
Story of my life, John.
Yeah.
But it's quite often the case. How many times do you get somebody who goes, oh, can you do this to me? And it's like, no, I can guide you, but you've got to do this to yourself.
Yeah.
You know, you're not part of this. It's not going to work. It's not like going in and just buying a something from the shop and replacing the part.
Well, they're basically a parked car, and you can't steer a parked car.
Exactly.
That's a good analogy.
I feel like the odd one out here. I've been lucky enough to be with my wife since I was 15.
Wow, that's impressive.
Too. So, yeah, we've had a pretty good relationship since then. But yeah.
Okay, well, I'll put it on you then, Doug. You've been with us that long. How have you held it together?
Really, right from the start, we were pretty well matched. We liked the same things and stuff, but we've also had ups and downs. We've had moments where we say, yeah, let's just have a little break. And when we were younger, and, you know, we'll spend a weekend apart on a little break. We don't separate. She'll go up the river, or I'll go up the river fishing. She'll go see some friends. Bit of time to think about things. We come back and it's communication. We talk about everything, like everything, whether it's uncomfortable or not. We sit down and we nut it out, because there's no point going to bed angry, because you're just going to wake up in the morning angry. So we speak about everything openly.
You go to bed angry, and that your subconscious mind's working on it all night, so you're not just sleeping through it. You're building it up even more.
Yeah, and I suppose the main thing we've learned is we've learned never to blame. So we don't blame each other for anything. If something goes wrong, it might sound a bit corny, but we know that we're both responsible no matter what happens in our relationship. There's always a tiny bit of blame goes both ways, so we don't blame it all, and we just sit down and try to work it out and do the same for our kids, and they both come out all right. So, yeah.
Yeah, I like that. No blame. Never heard that before. I like it. That's good. That's strong.
Yeah, so we've been like it since we were young. Just, been pretty strong.
Good on you, man.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
It's not corny either, Doug. If it's worked for you for this long, there must be something to it.
Yeah, no, it's worked, and it's funny. A lot of our friends come up to us and go, we're breaking up. Me and my husband are breaking up, or me and my fiance are breaking up. How do I get it back together? And so we can't really help with relationships. We can see what works in ours, but it might not work in yours. So every relationship's a little bit different, and
And I just say it always comes back to the communication. It all depends on, well, how do you do that communication?
Yeah, speak of devil just walked in, but yeah.
A lot of the time, people find
relationships like anything. You've got to work on it every day. Every day there's a challenge, and every day there's something new. And like, she's probably wanting to watch her TV right now, but she can't because I've got this running. So there's always little things going on, but you just got to make sure that you treat it as a team and work it out together, rather than sort of pulling one direction and her pulling another way. You sort of got to get together and pull in the same direction, I suppose.
It doesn't matter what we have in life, it always needs some maintenance, and depends on whether we put that time into maintaining it or not.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you were going to say, Michael, a moment ago.
I was just going to say there's a new generation of people coming up. You call them millennials if you like, but there's that generation, and also the slightly older generation as well, where relationships have almost become disposable to a lot of people. They get into relationships unconsciously, they stay in them unconsciously, and then instead of working through things, as Doug was just saying, you talk about stuff, you work as a team, you work as a partnership. There's a commitment there. People sort of, I've noticed this, I've just observed this in my own work and also in the world in general, in society, and that is that relationships have become disposable. Really, they really have. Things are not working. People just sort of say, "Oh well, this is not working for me anymore. See you later."
Yeah,
literally,
100%.
they literally pack a bag and they leave. And then what they do is they get together with somebody else 3 months or even a month later, and they do exactly the same thing, and the same pattern and the same cycles continue.
Right. And they move in with each other.
So they finally get it. Yeah, that's right. Until they finally get it and they realise, shit, I actually have to make something work. It's up to me as well. And I've got to do something. I've got to contribute to this as well.
And I think that's quite important. Now, we talked, as we said, we talked about the masculinity and everything else. Well, that's part of our masculinity that we really need to put some more effort into. To look after our, to build on those relationships. We want to lead the family. If we've got that feeling that a man is the one who leads the family, well, we're the ones who better start doing that and get it going.
I always thought the man was the head of the family, but the woman's the neck, and she turns the head any way she wants. I don't know if there's any truth in that, but it's just something I related to.
I love that one. That's beautiful. I was hearing something on Facebook or the book earlier on where men and women were talking about computers, and I can't remember all of the parts, but the women were saying, well, there were 4 parts about a man. The computer had to be a male. The first thing you have to do to get its attention is you got to turn it on. But it's very well put together, and it's quite humorous and everything else. And that's one of the things I think that we're missing in our relationships. We're not laughing enough. We're so worried about being politically correct that we're very careful about what we say, and therefore we've taken the fun, the humour out of our relationships, because we're so careful about being politically correct, not being, saying the wrong things around people. And as I said, we've got a precious society these days where everything's disposable. If it's not working, throw it out and start again. I think that's added to a lot of that. Need a lot more humour. We need to be able to laugh at ourselves and laugh with our partners as well.
Absolutely.
And if your relationship doesn't allow space for you to be able to express freely, without judgment and without animosity and resentment and all that sort of stuff, then probably not the relationship for you. Or both of you need to be able to work on different things within yourselves in order to create the relationship where that space can be created for each person.
Yeah.
So I think political correctness is, don't get me started on that, but I think it's just out of control, honestly. It doesn't allow for any sort of free expression at all.
Oh, that's right. It's more about control and everything else. And people abbreviate it because everyone likes to abbreviate it, and they say, well, PC. Well, I thought PC were plastic components that attached the toilet to the system, wasn't it? To the drain.
Yeah.
That's the night that I'm seeing political correctness in these days.
Okay.
But we've got to have a lot more humour. We've got to start laughing at ourselves and not take things so seriously. That's one of the good things about the campfire. We started off laughing. I screwed up with the recording earlier on, and I'm sure that John in particular is not going to let me forget this one for quite a while.
No, hell no.
And the good thing is we're laughing about it, and this is what I love about it. And it's a way we should be actually coming through as men, talking to other men, not taking ourselves so seriously, having a laugh and everything else, and looking at the lighter side and go, okay, well, what is most important in our futures, in our relationships? What is it we really want? And how does that respect the other party as well?
Collaboration.
Yeah, I think focusing on like whatever the adversity is, like whatever you're in a relationship, you usually lock horns over a problem. You just got to work on, like Doug said, like there's no blame, and you work it out. Like you just got to have that that skill, that resilience. You got to be able to just do it. Instead of walking around with chips on your shoulder and throwing rocks at each other, like that just doesn't work for anyone. And when you're going through it, you don't see it. But most people are sitting there afterwards and go, yeah, I was probably stupid doing that. So it's about getting those things in place first, which Doug has. Hats off to you, brother. You've got it worked out.
It's worked for a young age just to talk. Like, it all comes down to talking like that.
And it's just common sense, really, isn't it?
That's
But
it.
we don't apply that common sense in times of stress. I think Alan Pease, you know, that body language dude?
Yeah.
He told a story. He said he had this. He was running late for a plane, and when you're in times of stress, you know, you don't think straight. So he's flying along. He had 20 minutes to get there, and he was 30 minutes away, and he blew a tyre. So he took the tyre off, took all the nuts off, put all the nuts in the hubcap. That's how old the story was. He put nuts in a hubcap, and as he went past the car, knocked the hubcap, and all the stuff, all the nuts went into the grass. The long grass, he couldn't find it. And he was outside of a psychiatric institution. He saw this bloke wearing a white coat watching him, and he said, so this bloke watching him said, so why don't you just take one nut off every other wheel, put it on, then just go to the service station, get some more nuts, and then go to the airport. And he goes, oh, you must be one of the doctors here. You know, like you must. He goes, no, I'm in here because I'm crazy, not because I'm stupid. But, you know, times of stress, you make stupid decisions. You know, you just got to pull yourself away from that.
And that's probably a really great place to finish this up on. Great advice to people. If you're getting caught up in it, take a step back, find a coach, find somebody you can actually sit down and have a chat with, and go into looking, well, how do I find a solution in this? Not get into that pity party where you're looking for blame. And look, you know, so you're facing on the solution. And that way it'll work out for you. Well, thanks very much, gentlemen, for being here with me today. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Alan. It was awesome. Great to meet you, Michael and Doug.
Yeah, nice to meet you guys as well. Fantastic.
Excellent.
Pleasure, guys. Thank you.
And we'll see everybody else on the next panel discussion. Bye for now.
See ya.